Today on the Mr. Maple Show podcast, Tim and Matt interview author Brie the Plant Lady, Brie Arthur.
Konnichiwa, y'all, and welcome to the Mr. Maple Show. We got a special episode here for you today. I've got Brie the Plant Lady with us today on the podcast.
And Brie is an author. She's written a couple books. She's got so many fun things going on. Guys, we've known Brie for a really long time. She's been one of our friends in horticulture for a number of years.
I mean, you were at my wedding. We're coming up on 10 years, by the way, and 2 more years, so it's been a minute.
It's been a minute. Thanks for having me, you guys. You're my favorite people in horticulture, and I kind of feel like I've watched you grow up.
Well, I mean, you did know us when we were like at tailgate markets. So, and in the horticulture world, yeah, we were as broke as we could get when we knew you originally. So, yeah, if you compare originally to now, I think we've all had a big come up. It's crazy.
We're all grown-ups now.
At least physically. I don't know about mentally. I'm still working on that part. But yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. And same with you. It's like we've watched your career progress so much over the years. I know originally when we were hanging out, it was like you were the propagator at Community Forest back in the day, and we were coming and bugging you about how to produce things or get ideas on how to do rooted cuttings, and we're still doing that.
The good old days. I know. I used to love when you guys would come to the nursery because you were actually excited about all the weirdo plants that got my heart beating fast.
Yeah, and it's incredible to see. I mean, Brie's grown into her own empire now too. So like as we've continued to expand, you're on the speaker docket. You're an author. It's incredible to see all the things you've accomplished over the years as well. We follow you and we're like, this is incredible. It's inspirational. We're like, this is awesome.
Well, I do feel the same about you guys. It's just exciting to see the opportunities that horticulture offers.
Well, speaking of horticulture offers, how did everything get started for you in horticulture?
Well, I grew up in southeastern Michigan, and there's only a 4-month growing season. So everybody basically loses their mind when the ground thaws, and you work your tails off all summer long. And so my family's way of saying we had a good weekend was by working all weekend long and then like falling into a coma. And I was an obsessive lawnmower. I really like straight lines. I was like compulsive about having perfect X's by the end of summer. And I was in 4-H. We were the only non-farmers in the 4-H group. So I would be able to participate by growing flowers and vegetables to enter into the county fair when everybody else had animals. And that continued on, into high school. But really when I got to college, decided to study horticulture. It was my love and adoration of marijuana, of cannabis.
I knew this part.
That drove me to study horticulture. And, I look back now and I think, this was the late 90s. And I think politically, I thought maybe we were going in a different direction than we ended up going.
If you just started your empire back then, you'd be a billionaire, right? Nobody else is. That was like the first that. Now everybody does that.
Now it's hardly even profitable,
right? Yeah.
But through that time, I did some internships and actually landed in North Carolina working at Montrose, which is a private garden in Hillsborough. And I got completely distracted with ornamental horticulture.
That's a good distraction.
It is. And thankfully I did because, Al Gore didn't get elected and marijuana did not become legal. And I don't know what I would have done. I probably would have had to move to the Netherlands. And instead, I actually moved back to North Carolina full time after I graduated in 2002. And I've been here ever since.
It's incredible. You've got a huge horticulture background from, and of course, growing edible plants, things that are, the home garden application for people to be able to grow their own food and products right there in their landscape. To before that, the woody ornamental side of things. I mean, you've worked at several woody ornamental nurseries, herbaceous nurseries. You really got experience in every aspect of horticulture. It's kind of crazy.
Well, it is a good pedigree, so to speak, and when I was like, well, I was the production manager at Plant Delights. So
That's
I'm
a pretty good pedigree.
pretty well versed in strange, herbaceous material. And it was when I was working at Plant Delights that I really discovered my adoration of trees and shrubs. As a propagator, if you can't root a salvia, you probably aren't in the right business. But propagating trees and shrubs takes more skill, more time, more strategy. And I was really excited when I went into wholesale production to learn more about that end of it. Because, when you look around at the horticulture that everyone interacts with, whether they realize it or not, trees and shrubs are the basis. And working in wholesale tree and shrub production really changed my perspective and understanding of what makes the landscape world go round. And it's not just about weird plants, it's about plants that are reliable with very little help, plants that grow in these horrible conditions surrounded by asphalt, with no care at all. It's the opposite of home gardening. That experience made me a better horticulturalist, even though the plant material didn't really make my heart flitter. It made me more practical in understanding, what the reality of growing plants can be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes down to the horticulture, we were just going through, and it was always the oddball plants that we'd both start geeking out about it. It's like, oh, check this out. Oh, wow. Check this out. And so I know you've got a lot of oddball ornamentals. What are some of your favorite oddball ornamental trees?
Well, I'm obsessed with Prunus mumes. So, anything that blooms in the middle of January, like right now, I can't not get excited over, especially coming from Michigan. I'd say, when I see things that are coming to life and I see bees floating around at a season that ordinarily would be nothing, I can't help myself. So, Hemamelis, Prunus mume, Coralopsis, of course, camellias. I confess this now. When I first went to Camellia Forest, I went there with the intention of cleaning the nursery up and getting it organized, making it so they had better and more diverse non-camellia options. And I actually said to Kaime, camellias are like hostas. There's too many cultivars.
Uh-oh.
And she just sort of nodded and laughed. And then 6 weeks later, when the camellias started blooming and I was compulsively taking tens of thousands of photos, she's like, yeah, what do you feel about camellias now? And I'm like, oh yeah, I can see why there's 25,000 registered Camellia japonicas, the intricacies of each.
It's insane. Yeah. One of the reasons we do this podcast is because we used to get to go to do so many speaking engagements pre-COVID. We'd always be on different dockets with you. And these are the crazy conversations we would get to have, at S&A or whatever we were at. So we're always bugging our friends. So it's so much fun to kind of reconnect and have a good excuse to come and interview you about stuff. But these are kind of conversations we'd be sitting around with Todd Lazane or somebody at a table and going, so what do you think about, this shrub? So now we just try to record them. It's the only difference.
Well, I think it's a worthy cause. And, I still stop in my tracks for a weird variegated sport, even though I know that's not for everybody. It is for me. I can't help myself.
Well, you were one of the people, especially when you were at Camellia Forest, who really got Tim and I turned on to Acer liviarinum subspecies formosanum, which a lot of people call Acer seriolatum now. But you were singing its praises. You're like, you need to be doing more of this plant. It's heat tolerant. And kind of opened us up. I mean, we started developing a whole series of Acer liviarinums after that. We started doing a lot more, focusing on Acer liviarinum. But you were the one that was like, this is bulletproof in high heat areas, and really singing the praises of that and Acer triflorum for high heat areas.
I cannot say enough positive things about those two species of Acers. I mean, anything that tolerates the reality of southeastern conditions is worth exploring more. And at that time, there was nothing but seed grown.
Right.
And so by making selections that might have a better, growth habit, especially for suburban conditions, I've actually started using those as cutbacks.
Yeah.
And the new wood is that, beautiful green, and it's so straight. And of course, I I overplant. I plant trees and shrubs like annuals, which is not what everybody else should do. Okay, don't follow my lead on that. But basically, doing purposeful coppicing on certain species has really proved to be a good decision.
Well, it was a great area for you to push us into. I mean, we would come visit and you would give us buckets of Acer seriolatum and be like, you need to do this one. Like, you just imposed upon us that we had to learn more about this plant. And to be honest, it opened us up to a ton of more exploration in Acer oliveranum.
Later, we were collecting off of an Acer oliveranum. We found an Acer oliveranum X Shirasawanum.
We do a whole heat seeker series now.
We called Hot Blonde. It's a yellow that can handle full sun. It leaves out late, so avoids later threats of frost because it's got the Shirasawanum influence.
But you really inspired a lot of that, though, because you're like, you need to be doing this one. And it's not a Japanese maple, but this one's going to take you to a more heat tolerant place.
And nothing wrong with looking to Taiwan.
Yeah.
Especially as the world changes and we do have to deal with more extremes in our temperatures. Having that extra heat tolerance is really a benefit.
Outstanding. So let's talk a little bit about some of your books. Like, I know we hadn't gotten to the foodscape and stuff as much yet, but let's talk a little bit about I know you're an author of multiple books.
2, working on actually a revised edition of the Foodscape Revolution. It's been such a big success in helping guide people, especially those of us living in suburban neighborhoods where we have a lot of covenants and restrictions from the HOA. And it can be, a real problem in gaining people's confidence in knowing what they're allowed to do as far as like growing plants on their own property. And that's really the purpose of both books, is to give people creative ideas for how to use horticulture in a way that won't alienate you from your neighbors.
I love that you test all this stuff too. We'll talk about the YouTube channel more, but go follow Brie the Plant Lady, because anything she talks about, like you actually implement it. Like we're going to grow hops in a bucket or whatever. Like, there's always a new idea, but she goes all in on, like, it's been fully tested. If it's something you're recommending, like, you've experimented and went like all out with it.
I believe in showing experimentation, and I don't care whether something is successful or not.
I love
because
that,
everybody can learn from the experience. And then, once I've put something into play that really does work, that's, easy and reliable and relatively cost effective, that's the stage where I want to see, other people start to experiment with it. And particularly in other regions, I know you guys are on a selling to a wide audience. It's really hard to give advice to people that live in climates that are so different from your own. And so I really see YouTube as like crowdsourcing for information.
Appreciate it. So are you more famous now for the speaker circuit, the books, or the tomato tastings?
Oh, Lord.
I think the tomato tastings have become like their own, like you took over for Martha now on the tomato scale. That's like the Martha Stewart of tomato tastings.
Those tomatoes will make you question your ability as a horticulturalist. We do not live in a kind environment for tomatoes. And I live in a former tobacco field, and growing them in the ground has basically become impossible now. But that did lead me to hydroponics, which is a cool thing to introduce people to, just the idea of having a bucket of water on your back porch and how much more successful you can be taking the soil out of the condition of growing tomatoes.
Right.
You had one of the hydroponic systems set up last time we went to visit, and I was like, this is crazy. I think you might even had fish in one of them.
Yep. I went head first and did aeroponics, which is my most successful, which is actually it's called the tower garden. And that system is unique because it turns on and off. So it has 15 minutes of water and then 15 minutes of air. And that air time actually prunes the roots. Then I did traditional hydroponics where the roots are always engaged in water that has oxygen sort of bubbling in it.
Yeah.
And then the aquaponics, which proved not to be my most successful experiment. I put them in zinc-lined feed tanks, and the fish all died from zinc poisoning. So don't do that, okay? See, this is why I'm here.
You've experimented, so now we know.
Yes. But, I was actually just harvesting broccoli this morning out of my tower garden before I came up here.
That's so cool. It's super interesting. I remember the first time you had the first annual tomato tasting, and like that's back when we were doing garden shows every single week, so we couldn't make it. But now it's like it's grown into its own.
Oh,
I don't even know what
it's
you're
a
up to now,
beast.
but it's like
It's a beast. We've taken some time off from it, especially from the pandemic.
yeah, I'm sure.
We did our last one actually in 21 as a fundraiser for the North Carolina Botanical Garden.
Oh, cool.
And it was a great success. You guys know this because you follow me, but my not so secret superpower is to plan an event and then break a drought with the amount of rain that will fall during the event.
It sounds. We might need to do some of that on the West Coast sometime this year.
Yeah, I used to say that California should hire me to break their droughts, and that has been a consistent pattern. We are really good at throwing the tomato tasting with 6 inches of rain as an accompaniment. Not the most fun as the party planner, but I've gotten used to it. In fact, my pattern continues because our last open garden, which was in the fall, is when Tropical Storm Ophelia hit. And we still had hundreds of people come, and they all came inside my house.
Oh, wow.
And you've got a couple open houses coming up.
We do. We have our spring open garden, which is always the Saturday of Mother's Day weekend, and it's to show people the beautiful cottage garden displays, which are all done from seed. It's basically installations that cost about $20, and the joy that you get from seeing them far exceeds that. And we're doing a big native plant sale because, of course, we're in the midst of building out a native garden on the Airbnb property that we bought, which is the house next door to where we live.
Cool.
And so it's been really fun sharing the garden with people that way. The open gardens are free, no registration, rain or shine.
How do they find out about that?
Well, you can visit my website, briegrows.com. Of course, Brie the Plant Lady YouTube. I'm already, posting videos, promoting that. I have a newsletter that goes out monthly. I promise you'll never get more than one a month. People don't realize how much effort goes into building a newsletter.
Trust me, we send out one a week. So.
Oh my God.
We send out 2 a week.
2 a week, actually.
That's a thankless
we can't
job,
make that
everybody. Be sure to open those because at least for me, seeing those stats that people are actually viewing and appreciating the effort that has gone into making that, it means a lot because I have a lot of times where I'm like, why am I doing this? This is, I really like plants and I really, really don't like technology. And my self-employment journey has led me to have to deal with a lot of technology, and I don't really love it. So open those emails.
You're one of the people, too, that does our crazy adventure where we put out a video every single day, and I think you do, too.
I do.
How many years are you into a video every single day on your YouTube channel now?
I think I'm well into 2 years.
I think so. I follow you, so I know. It's like we're some of the only crazy channels that do it every single day, and like what the work that goes into that, too.
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah.
And you guys have really embraced doing it better. The first thing I asked when I got here today is, how do you make your thumbnails? I can't believe the amount of time and energy I'm spending right now thinking about thumbnails.
Every little aspect is so much. It's crazy. It engulfs your life at some point.
It does.
But it's fun too. And I appreciate with your channel how much you're sharing all your experiments, all of your endeavors, whether it's a native garden, whether it's food harvesting or just any of the aspects you're doing. It's like applicable. It's like people can watch your channel. They can look at what you're doing. They can go, okay, I'm not doing that experiment, but I'm doing this one. There's things you can learn and do immediately from it. And you share it whether it works or not. Like, I love that.
Thank you for saying that. No, my goal always is to try and make gardening as accessible to everyone as possible. And by really focusing on, effort, especially physicality, because not everybody can, bend over and crawl around on their hands and knees, and also accessibility from an economic perspective, because it can be really expensive to buy, a bunch of, say, like 7-gallon shrubs to make your landscape look complete. So my approach is always trying to, make this so that especially younger people, maybe first-time home buyers, will feel like, okay, I can interact with my landscape in a way that helps my life, it helps my health, it it actually isn't the cause of trouble with your neighbors, but is a reason for you to interact with your neighbors.
I think it's interesting. I think even more so than our generation, like that younger generation right now, like we were joking about this with Bryce. He talks about being an entry level class. I'm like, these kids don't know how good they got. They got Bryce Lane at your entry level class. Like you got Bryce telling you should get into horticulture, but it's like, even the expression like touch grass we're talking about with them, it's like these kids, they want to do more of that stuff. They're so stuck in technology.
Yes.
And I think a lot of what you're doing has real world application for that.
Oh, I appreciate it so much. I think that my obsession with growing weird plants from cuttings, which was definitely more of a high-end market, people that are shopping mail order are pretty dedicated, has now translated to an outrageous obsession with seed.
Yeah.
I can't help it. I don't think that I'll ever be tired of growing things from seed because you never know what you're going to end up with. It feels like it's a treasure hunt every day. Whereas, I was an asexual propagator for half of my career.
Right.
I knew exactly what those plants were going to look like because they were clones.
No variability.
Yeah. And so now I just feel like every time I walk outside, there's something new that I get to get excited over.
Very cool. Very cool.
I know that feeling exactly. When we were at the Buckholtz farm this fall, we started looking around at all the seed hanging on the trees. And Matt and I literally, we're shooting YouTube videos like crazy, but we're like, okay, we're going to spend all of today and part of tomorrow collecting seed. And we just went running through and we're like, this is a lot of seed, y'all. And we're like, yes, that's exactly what we're doing.
Now we need to get everybody here to go collect more. So
they're like, you're the boss now, I guess.
But that's the part where you get all the new genetics, the new interesting things, and so much diversity and new selections. And from an ornamental side of things, it's like the way to get new stuff, right?
Well, absolutely. And it's exciting when something's open pollinated and you're like, this was meant to happen, but you're the one that discovers it.
Oh, it's like, Corbin said this at Works with us. He's like, we started pulling seeds and he's like, every seed's like a lottery ticket. You just don't know which seed's going to be something cool. He's like, I can't leave any of those on the tree because those are all chances for something interesting to happen.
It's why my interns, basically all they do is collect seed, process seed, and then package seed.
So are you teaching any classes at the Ralston? I think you're doing some night classes from what I understand.
I do. I've got, actually, I think it's like just 2 weeks time. I've got a great camellias class, which is going to be primarily focusing on camellia species that bloom in the winter. So not just japonicas, but wanting to introduce people to some of the lesser known species that are really outstanding. I've got a really exciting one in March, my traveling tree hugger class, which I will have just come back from South Africa.
Oh, nice.
First time going to South Africa. It's for the International Plant Propagators meeting.
Oh, wow. Now, you need to talk a little bit about IPPS. I know you've been really influential in that. We hadn't brought that up yet.
Yes, I'm now on the international board, which I'm really excited about because I can put some of my marketing expertise into helping improve the society as a whole so that we can we can reach more propagators. And really our focus now is production as a whole, because so many nurseries don't just propagate. It's the whole cycle,
right?
From start to finish. And so we're working on kind of a rebrand and some strategies to reach more people in the production world so that this can continue to influence and educate a new generation of nursery people.
And I always want to get more involved in IPPS, to be honest with you. Now we're trying to get more time. Now that Tim and I are getting away more, we're like, I want to get back involved more in IPPS.
You need to.
And for our listeners, the International Plant Propagators Society is basically a way to learn about how to propagate all different types of plants. There's proceedings that go back to years and years ago.
With nursery from everywhere.
Of research that has been done, and different people who write papers on how to produce, rare and interesting things. And in those papers, there's things like how to graft, you can graft Acer Grisham onto Acer Saccharum, which doesn't make any sense, but someone's done it before.
In the proceedings,
and it's been successful. And then you can go look at these plants at these arboretums where they're, still doing fantastic. And you're like, this is amazing. And man, I learned a lot from IPPS. I think after Talon Buckholtz came and visited us and wrote a blog on visiting Mr. Maple the first time, he sent us IPPS proceedings from like really, really long time
Like
ago,
all the way to like 2012, 2013.
Oh, you got the books.
We got
You
some books.
the
We got
library
some hard
collection.
copies. Yeah.
Well, we've been working to get all of those proceedings, which are 75 years
Wow.
of proceedings from our global society. We have 9 regions globally, to get them available for free on our website. And you don't even have to be a member to access them.
Wow. What
So
a resource.
it's a huge thing that, I think in a production world, it doesn't matter that it happened 50 years ago. It's still relevant.
It worked, right? Did it work? That's the answer, right? Somebody wrote about this because it worked.
And it's one of the only societies that embraces both academia and the industry. And it's a really nice mix of everyone. And even though I don't work in really the production industry anymore, I'm really primarily focused on consumer communications. There's still so much relevant information, and it does feel like a family reunion. That's the thing about going to an IPPS meeting. You get to hug Michael Durr and see Dr. Creech, and there's just there's a connection that we get to share in this industry.
I miss it. We've been
special.
Tim and I were so busy for so long. We were involved so much in the Maple Society. Now we've kind of been able to step back a little bit as new people have started to take it over, and we're like, man, we need to get more involved in the Conifer Society and the IPPS. Like those are the two that immediately come to mind. As like, I want to see those people. It's such a fun group, and
you're always welcome.
Yeah, and I would encourage people, especially if you're younger, to join. I know there's been scholarships, there's been trips all around the world. There's so many opportunities with IPPS, especially if you're a young person in horticulture. It's a great place to get started.
We offer a really unique experience exclusively for young professionals to attend the European region meeting every year, all expenses paid. I went 10 years ago to Denmark, and it's what's amazing is that I am still in touch with the people that I met there on a regular basis. And now anytime I go to Europe, I have this huge network of people. Cool. So yeah, I'm very excited to go to South Africa next year. I'll get to go to New Zealand.
Oh, wow. Now I'm really jealous. Both those sound amazing.
So come to IPPS meetings.
Yeah, super cool. And thank you for all the work you've done and keeping that going and administration and everything there. That's like such a wealth of help and knowledge for the industry.
So I hear you've been working on a native garden recently.
I have. I'm right at the 1-year mark. We actually broke ground January 15th of last year. And it's been a great learning experience. Again, I consider everything to be an experiment. I have no experience with North American natives. I specialized in Asian native broadleaf evergreens. And so this has been a real experience. I think my biggest frustration is just finding plants. The herbaceous market is generally well served, although those growers tend to be more mid-Atlantic, Northeast. And so there's a huge opportunity for some nurseries in the Southeast to embrace growing plants that have evolved with more realistic conditions for this region.
It's very interesting what we consider native, and like that some of those plants may be more regionally close to you than plants that would be considered more, geographically closer even.
What I'm learning from being on the periphery of the native world, I don't think I'll ever really be too deeply embedded in it because my nursery history is very exotic, and that's my expertise. But there's a camp of people who want to oversimplify it, and it's not simple, and it's dynamic. It's constantly changing, and every season is different. And I'm calling it a North American native garden. So I'm calling it Schultzian native, from the West Coast.
I think it's interesting. We end up doing more nativars than anything because we end up doing cultivars of weird natives that we like. And for us, it's always if it has merit.
Yes.
It has merit. Like if it looks cool and it captures your interest, I'm all in.
On the rhododendron side of things, on the native azaleas, we do rhododendron vasei. We do a bunch of species as well, but they've got ornamental traits that work well with the Japanese maple. So it works real well for our market. And a lot of people who are growing a Japanese maple can grow one of these native azaleas. They've got good drainage, organic plant matter. They're going to do well in their garden.
Right.
It blows me away now how many selections, though. You can get crazy with a nativar. Like you can get a nativar, like Little Prospect witch hazel. That's a native. Like that's insane. I'm just saying there's like so much like ornamental qualities that could rival anything from Asia that you look at. You're like, wow, that's insane.
But I'll say something real controversial here, and you might laugh at this. You know, ginkgos were native to the United States at one point.
You know, I did a talk called Native to Pangea. I believe in cultivar selection. So this is me being a nursery person. You take a seed grown variety, you look at whichever has the best trait for X, Y, and Z, and then you put a name on it so that it's distinct and it can be then clonally propagated. I don't understand where that breaks down with the native world, why that would be perceived as bad.
If your goal is to, say, have Cainanthus virginicus that fruits prolifically, why not select one that's the best prolific fruiting selection and then produce that?
Precisely.
Because then that would be something that would be more beneficial to the birds and the wildlife instead of, having this option out there that's not as good.
Right.
So there's
benefits to both, and the diversity, like we said from seed earlier too. There's the benefits of both. Yeah.
I think that there's an opportunity for all of it, but I do wish deeply from maybe just a personal perspective, I wish more nurseries would have more native options just to make it easier, to give me the option. Like, why would I choose Ilex crenata when I can have Ilex vomitoria? They're basically the same. You have to shear them to keep them into a stupid meatball. So why would I do a crenata instead of something that is more local? And there's a million examples, and the native plants just haven't been explored enough, in my opinion.
I'll put you on the spot with this one, but what would you say is the most underrated native? Like, what's really caught your eye that's like, people aren't doing this enough, and it has that ornamental quality, or it has more, it should be done more? Well,
I mean, I feel like Fothergilla is relatively well represented, but from my perspective, Fothergilla is like the only plant that didn't need to be on water every single day. So I decided when I was pulling out a whole bunch of stuff, including clethra and native azaleas and things that absolutely shouldn't be in a full sun tobacco field, I was like, ooh, but Fothergilla looks good. And another Spirea tomentosa and Spirea alba. But neither of those have any cultivar selections. And why not? Why don't we have some native spireas as the option at the garden center? They're beautiful. They looked beautiful all summer.
I knew you'd have a great answer for that.
They look beautiful now as they're, deciduous, but they still have their seed heads. And so, I've been talking to different plant brands like Proven Winners and First Editions, and I'm like, please put a little bit of effort into some of these North American plants. They deserve more attention.
Oh, that's great.
And maybe 20 years from now, we'll actually get there.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's a slow moving boat.
So let's talk a little bit. Where can they find your books at? Like, you've got 2 books out. I know they're wildly successful. I've got some signed copies that are out there. But what's the best way for people to purchase your books?
Well, of course, they're on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. But why not buy it from me and I'll personalize it?
Even better.
Ship it very quickly. So briegrows.com, really easy. Like I mentioned, I hate technology. I'm my sole manager of the website. So keep your expectations low, but it does function. They both sort of go hand in hand. Foodscape Revolution was my first book that really explores the integration of practical edibles in your ornamental landscape. Instead of having that isolated vegetable garden, it's bringing the vegetables closer to the space you actually interact in, so you manage them more efficiently. My second book, Gardening with Grains, was my passion project. Looking back now, I wish I would have just called it Cottage Gardening from Seed, because that's basically what it is. But it was my attempt at getting people to recognize, like, our essential food crops aren't really represented in our home vegetable gardens. Nobody is living exclusively off of a diet of kale and tomatoes. You're eating carbohydrates in some capacity, or you're eating animals that eat carbohydrates. Why isn't wheat and barley and oats and rice, why aren't these plants more normal And the goal of that book was to really break down those barriers and show that small scale grains do work even in a suburban residential situation.
That's fascinating.
And it's exciting because it captured the attention of another big wholesale grower, David Johnson, who owns Johnson Nursery down in Willard. And for the last few years, he's been doing large grain installations. And then
cool.
every June, we take groups of 60 people at a time. You usually do 6 to 8 classes. And we go out to the field, we hand harvest, we thresh and winnow. We come back to an air-conditioned tent, because remember, this is North Carolina in June, and we have the wheat seed ground into flour, and then they make a flat dough pizza that gets fire roasted. And so within an hour of it being in the field, they're eating it. And it's a transformative experience, in this 2024, people are so far removed from essential food sources.
Real food.
It's real food. It's substantial. It's something that people eat and can relate to. And I am so thrilled that people are recognizing the power of that. And more people are interested in exploring small grains as a home garden crop.
I think it's awesome. We'll get into some more of what you have coming up, ways people can find you. I know you're big on Instagram, YouTube, through Brie the Plant Lady. There's a lot of places people can find you and interact with you. You're out there, like you're one of like us. People say we do too many things. Like, you're out there too. You're everywhere. You can find her everywhere.
Well, my routine is I wake up, I drink coffee, and I post to Brie Grows Facebook, Brie the Plant Lady Instagram, primarily sharing the Brie the Plant Lady YouTube videos to keep people engaged. And I try and answer everybody's questions. And that's just kind of how I start my day. And I have to say, it's this incredible sense of community as a result of gardening. And, you end up becoming like friends with these people virtually, that when they show up to one of my open gardens or something, like I have this one amazing guy that flies down from Chicago. And it's just like, it shows the power of, even though you're not interacting in person every day, these relationships matter. And I know you guys have forged significant friendships through your experiences.
It's a whole new world. It's interesting because before we had all those shared relationships through horticulture with like you were at my wedding and Tom Cox was there with you. Like, I remember that. And it's like, it's so cool, but it's a whole new world of opening things up. Like, people get that interaction with you. They get to know you, and then they're there, and it's like, it's interesting. It's been a whole new animal for us. I think a lot of people got more kind of online during COVID. Like, we used to do 30 garden shows a year. We're like, we can't do any garden shows during COVID. Let's try to go to people. So we started doing more things. And I mean, it's like you. It's like it's great to see your success, and we're always looking at. We're like, man, we're fans. We're 4 hours away in Western North Carolina. We're like, wow, can you believe this? She's doing this. This is incredible. Like, it's so good to see this. So.
Well, it's definitely exciting. Look her up. It's exciting what COVID has sort of made us shift to do. And, I have alpha-gal now from a tick infection, and that's made traveling really hard. I mean, I'm anaphylactically allergic to anything from a mammal, including dairy. Like, my whole world used to revolve around butter and cheese, and now I can't have it. And eating at restaurants is really challenging. So my focus now with our Airbnb and the native building, this native garden, is to bring people to me for more, hands-on, really meaningful interactions where we, do garden to table cooking classes. And
I'm excited to see what's next.
Seed
That's going to be awesome.
And so, it's like, in part, it's just part of my new evolution of having to deal with just managing life in a world full of butter.
Well, definitely go check out Brie the Plant Lady on YouTube. You probably already follow her if you're following this podcast or our YouTube channel. She's got great daily content and so much relatable stuff.
And if you're into gardening, you got to jump in and listen. She's got a lot of things that are real applicable into gardening with food. But then some of those things you might say, hey, maybe if I tried that out with some of my woody ornamentals. So there's a lot of fun. It comes
from a place of sincerity because Brie's got a background in all of that. Like, you've come from the woody ornamental world, the native world, the plant, the food and edible world. Like, you've got a lot of toes and everything. So it comes with a lot of experience and a lot of genuine, real world experience in these things. So when you say this doesn't work. It's like, well, yeah, she's right. She's done that one.
She's tried and
Right.
failed. I appreciate you saying that, because more than anything, my only goal as a communicator is to be genuine. There's no point in pretending. I don't think that'll help other people succeed. And so I do hope that I'm not well adjusted. It's like plants and cats. I hope that shows. I think I have a whole group of people that only watch my videos because they like to see the cats come in on the time lapse while I'm working in the garden and the cats are flitting around.
That's funny.
Spoken like a crazy cat and crazy plant lady.
Brie the cat lady.
Brie the plant lady. Hey, we appreciate you hopping on here today. It's always fun when we can get people we have such a history with and friendship with over the years. And part of why we do this is the excuse to come down here and interview Brie. So we say, hey, we're gonna catch up with you and record it and share it with people and have some of these weird plant conversations on the podcast. So thank y'all for tuning in today.
Take care
God bless.
and have a great day.